Hey everybody. So it is February 1st, which means we are coming up on Valentine's Day here in a couple of weeks. So I felt it would be appropriate to talk about relationships, but don't worry, it is not just romantic relationships I'm talking about here. I'm talking about all relationships, okay? The relationship you have with your mail carrier and your parents and your cousins and your coworkers, like all the relationships, okay? Because the relationships in our lives are all important and they all need to be nurtured to stay healthy. So when I talk relationships, the stuff I talk about can be applied to any and all relationships. So keep that in mind. Don't just shut me off because you think I'm going to get all lovey-dovey, which I'm not, because that would make me gag. So I first want you to think about a show that you like to watch. Any show. It really doesn't matter, okay? A show or movie, anything. Because I can guarantee you, in whatever show you're watching, there's a relationship going on. And in that relationship, one person believes that another person should be doing things a certain way, should be saying things a certain way, handling certain situations in a particular way. And then this other person does not handle it that way. They do it some other way that they think is the best way to handle it. And now they've got this conflict and they have to work through this conflict. For me, I've been recently watching Arrow, and it cracks me up. Like listening to these people, like, because they keep secrets and then they're so mad that the person is keeping secrets from them, but once they hear the secret, they're so mad that it even happened and how could you, and now we're not friends because you did it in the first place and you lied to me about it and then you decided to tell me. Why would you tell me now? Oh, it's not fun. It's not supposed to be funny, but it's hilarious to me. Or like, I know people really like The Bachelor, and I've seen maybe a couple of episodes of The Bachelor, or maybe it was The Bachelorette. I don't remember. It must have been The Bachelor, where he takes one of the girls out on a date and asks her some questions. I think he asked her where she wanted to live, and she said Maine. Like, she wasn't sure. She's like, I could live different places, but I think I'd like to live in Maine because that's where my family's at. And then later, he's with the cameras doing the personal interview, right? And he's like, well, she didn't say that she wanted to go to California with me. So she must not actually love me that much. I'm like, yeah, because that's what that means. So what this is, having an expectation of how a person is supposed to behave, handle certain situations, talk about things, the way they're supposed to think, and then being emotionally affected when they don't do it that way. That is called having a manual. Okay? Very similar to like receiving a manual with a kitchen appliance, right? It tells you exactly how it's supposed to work and how to fix it if it doesn't work that way, right? We all have manuals for everyone in our lives, whether we realize it or not. We have this idea built up from personal beliefs and experiences that tell us how we believe people and the world should work. And when they don't work that way, we feel something has gone wrong, and that negatively affects our mood. Like, I'm not happy because this person did this when they should have done this. And that's really detrimental, right? Because we can't control other people. What's really funny about manuals too is that most of the time, we don't tell people how we think they should behave. We just expect them to behave that way. And then when they don't, they're in trouble, right? Like, for example, my husband did something that made me kind of upset. And which happens, I guess. It wasn't anything horrible, but I was feeling upset because I believed that he shouldn't have done this thing. Okay. So there's manual first off, right? I believed that he shouldn't have done this thing. But then I took it even further because I was feeling bad and I chose not to talk about it. But I had this idea in my head that he should talk to me about it. So what I did was kind of close myself off and then expected him to talk to me. But he saw me being closed off and thought, oh, she doesn't want to talk to me. And so he left to give me my space. And then later, I finally went to him. I was like, I can't believe you did this. Do you know me at all? You should have been talking to me. You should have been explaining what was going on and helping me work through it. You should know that I get closed off when I get a little upset. And as if like, it's so silly to think that he should know what I want when I didn't even tell him. I didn't tell him I wanted him to talk to me. In fact, I gave signals that implied I did not want him to talk to me. And then I chose to be upset when he couldn't read my mind. We can even think of something like really simple, right? With toothpaste. I know that this can be a big conflict for some people in their marriages when they share a tube of toothpaste and one person likes to squeeze from the middle and one person likes to squeeze from the bottom. And maybe you tell that person, hey, you have got to stop squeezing from the middle of this tube. It's driving me crazy. But they have this habit where they squeeze from the middle and they don't change. And now every morning or evening, maybe both, when you go in there and they have brushed their teeth before you and that tube of toothpaste is squeezed in the middle, you have an emotional reaction. So now your emotions, you're allowing your emotions to be controlled by this tube of toothpaste, by this person who chooses to act the way they want to, by this person who is exercising their agency in a different way that you would choose to use your agency. Now that person or even that inanimate object have power over you. Can you see how this is a problem, you guys? When we attach our happiness to other people's behavior because we cannot control their behavior. So here's my suggestion. I highly recommend that you get rid of the manuals. Now, this does not mean that you're perfectly accepting of everything everyone does. That's not what I mean at all. And I'm going to get more into that here toward a little bit later here on the podcast, on this episode. So don't worry. But first, let me tell you how to throw out the manual. Okay. First, you've got to have awareness around what your manuals are. Okay. So you've really got to think about, and I suggest write down what you expect from people. Just pick a specific person in your life and write down all the things that you think they should be doing as opposed to the things that they are doing. There's going to be things that you're going to come up with that you're going to be like, oh my heck, I didn't even realize that this was an issue. This bothered me so much and that this was happening so much. Another thing you might realize is that you're trying to control them, right? Like, hey, I really need you to be different. I need you to change who you are and squeeze that toothpaste from the bottom, or I might have a heart attack. As silly as it sounds, that's trying to control them, right? And then, of course, there's bigger things. But it does come down to control, right? You're trying to control them so that you can be happier. People don't want to be controlled, right? So anyway, write it down. Write down what they're doing as opposed to what you want them to be doing so that you can gain awareness of what your manual for this person is. And then I want you to start adopting the belief that they are exactly as they should be. They are behaving exactly as they should be. And I know that that's going to be difficult, especially at first. But think about this, like, you make mistakes, right? But when you're making the decision, okay, you've thought about the options and the pros and the cons, and you've thought, what is the best option for me at this point right now? And then you make that decision. And then sometimes it's a mistake, right? Like, okay, that did not go as I wanted it to go. But at the time that you made the decision, you thought it was the best one. Even if it was like a terrible decision, let's think extreme here. Let's say addiction, okay? Let's say you've got this addiction and you know, like, heroin is bad for you. Heroin could kill you. But at the time when you're faced with the decision to take it or not, maybe you're thinking, like, I know it's going to hurt me later, but it's going to feel good right now. And I'm hurting right now, and I really want to feel good right now. So I'm going to take this. That's a terrible decision. But you believed it was the best decision for you at the time that you made it, with the information that you had at the time that you made it. So we need to start adopting the belief that everyone is really doing the best that they can. And sometimes their best is terrible. Okay? So figure out what your manuals are. Decide that you're just going to throw them out and let this person be who they are. Allow them the space to make their own decisions and handle situations the way they see fit, and choose to love them anyway. Now I know what you're thinking. At this point, aren't they just going to walk all over me? That, my friend, is where boundaries come in. Okay? Boundaries are simply, if you do this, if you use your agency to make this kind of a decision, I am going to do this to protect myself. Okay? It's not being controlling or manipulative. You're allowing them to make whatever choice they want to make. Okay? And it's not a punishment. A boundary is not a punishment. Like, you did this bad thing and now I'm going to make sure you hurt too. Or I'm going to take away your privileges or whatever. That's not what it is. What it is you're an adult. You get to make the choices you want to make, but I am also an adult. And I'm going to make the decisions that I want to make to protect myself. Okay? So, for example, let's go back to the addiction thing, right? Say you have someone in your life who's an addict, and one of your boundaries may be, there will be no substances in my home. Okay? If you choose to bring substances in my home, you will have to leave. And you can do that, right? Because it's your home. So you can either escort them out and they go willingly, or you find another way, right? Or perhaps if you bring substances in, I will leave. I will leave to protect myself. Okay? Maybe thinking on smaller levels, right? Because I like to think in extremes because they help us to get the point across, but this is really for small things too. So, like, maybe one of your boundaries is you won't tolerate being yelled at. Like, so then if someone's yelling at you, you can be like, okay, you can you need to either stop yelling or I will leave, right? It's like, you're welcome to yell all you want. You go ahead and just keep yelling. But if you do, just know that I'm not going to stick around, right? You have your authority and I have mine. That is the difference between being controlling and being a doormat. That is the difference between being manipulative and being respectful and loving. It's like saying, I love and respect you enough to allow you to make your own choices. And I respect and love myself enough to protect myself from your bad choices. So let's go back to that tube of toothpaste. I have a little bit of experience with this one. This was our issue at the beginning of our marriage. And I asked my husband several times to squeeze from the bottom of the tube. And that was something he could not get on board with. He had developed this habit. He clearly didn't think that it was important enough to try to change that habit. And I decided that I no longer wanted to have my emotions tied to this tube of toothpaste. So I know some people get their own tube of toothpaste. I, however, compromised a little bit. I allowed him to squeeze from the middle of the toothpaste until it got about to 2/3 full, and then I would cinch it all up, like squeeze it all to the top as much as I could, and then I'd fold it over and I'd give it a solid crease so that it kind of changed the size of the tube. Now it looked like the tube was full again. And he could continue to squeeze from the middle until it started to annoy me, and then I would push it all down again toward the top. So I allowed him to be himself, and I made this boundary that once it gets to a certain point where it's driving me crazy, I'm going to fix the problem. And it's not, like, he doesn't even know that I do this. I mean, obviously he's going to see that I cinch it up, but he has no idea that it was my plan or that I had a problem with it. We've been married for 10 years. I'm sure he's long forgotten that I used to complain about the tube of toothpaste. But now this little thing doesn't get in our way anymore. It doesn't affect how I think about him or feel about him. It does not negatively affect our relationship. And it allows me the space to just love him for who he is, regardless of how he uses toothpaste. So I would encourage you guys to work on this a little bit, gain some awareness, toss out the manual, and allow yourself the space to feel more love rather than contention or resentment or frustration. Thanks for listening, you guys, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.